Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtotar Dadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtotar Dadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, I think we finished 29, right? So you got notes all the time, so you keep notes where we finished. I'm pretty. All right, so text 30 for sure. Is that the consensus? Huh? You sure? You're not sure. How about you, Govardhan? Any idea? He says
I think it is 29.
29. That's what I said. 29. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 9th day of August 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 13 entitled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. Text 29 at the bottom of page 560. Samam Pashyan Hisarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Na Hinasti Atmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahanastya Atmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram nahanasyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram nahanasyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Dharmaraj. Samam pashyani sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram nahanasyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Go down. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram nahanasyatmanatmanam tato yati padam gatim. Ishtadev, Prabhu. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram nahanasyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Go ahead, Dimitri. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram nahanasyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Go ahead. No? All right. All right. Tyler, you're on. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram nahanasyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram nahanasyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Samam, equally, pashyan, seeing, he, certainly, sarvatra, everywhere, samavastitam, equally situated, ishwaram, the super soul, na, does not, hinasti, degrade, atmana, by the mind, atmanam, the soul, tataha, then, yati, reaches, param, the transcendental, gatim, destination. Translation: one who sees the super soul, one who sees the super soul equally present everywhere, in every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. Purport: the living entity, by accepting his material existence, has become situated differently than in his spiritual existence. But if one understands that the Supreme is situated in his Paramatma manifestation everywhere, that is, if one can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every living thing, he does not degrade himself by a destructive mentality, and he therefore gradually advances to the spiritual world. The mind is generally addicted to sense gratification processes, but when the mind turns to the Supersoul, one becomes advanced in spiritual understanding. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of the Sri Parampara. So, as I mentioned last time, there's a series of verses now talking about seeing the soul and the super soul together in the body. Here it's just talking about seeing the super soul within all living beings. And the very nice and important phrase here, does not degrade himself by the mind. Now you may recall in the 6th chapter where Krishna says that the mind is the best friend of the living entity and his worst enemy. Udaret atmanatmanam, natmanam vavasariyet, atmaiva jatmano bandhur, atmaiva riparatmanaha. One should, this verse he says, one should elevate himself by the mind, not degrade himself. The mind is the best friend and the worst enemy. So, you really can't get away from the fact that any serious yoga system is dealing with the mind. The mind is the vehicle by which we become attached to this world, by which we get a new body. We'll read in the 15th chapter near the beginning how the five senses and the mind is the center of the five knowledge-gathering senses and also the active senses. And the mind that is filled with material thoughts and material desires is the vehicle, if you will, by which the soul rides to the next body. We're creating our mentality with everything we do. Everything we hear, we see, we think, the activities we're performing, the attractions we're developing, the repulsions we're developing. All of that is part of the material mind, which has forgotten Krishna and become absorbed in the dualities of the material world. At the end of the 7th chapter, Krishna has a verse that Prabhupada describes as an explanation of how he came to the material world. Itchadvesha samurtena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoham sargayanti parantapa. The word sarga means creation. Sarga is the sarga and visarga. Sarga is what Krishna does, the creation, the Mahavishnu, everything coming out. But visarga is what Brahma does. He manages and tries to arrange all the population of the planets and all these different things. He's kind of the engineer of the universe. The Greeks had a word for it. I forget what it is, demos or something like that. So, the mind is the key element. That's why Prabhupada called it the Society for Krishna Consciousness. We're trying to change our consciousness. And through the processes of devotional service, hearing and chanting about Krishna, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, remembering Krishna, serving the lotus feet, worshipping, giving everything, becoming his friend, all the different processes, Archanam, worshipping the deity. They're all meant for pulling the mind away from matter and fixing it on Krishna. Now, the great thing about this process of yoga, unlike some, what Krishna describes in chapter 6, which is, sitting. The whole thing is dedicated or is designed to make it easier to concentrate when you think about it. It starts with yama and niyama. Now, yama and niyama are moral principles, meaning that if you're involved in all kinds of, if your senses are uncontrolled, if you're always being whipped around by the different modes of nature, there's no question of any serious yoga. So first comes yama. Yama are the don'ts. Before you do, you have to have the don'ts in place. So we have our 4 regular principles. Yama, niyama, these are positive things to do. Do go to the forest. Do sit down in a certain way. Because the third one is asana. Asana is this seat. And you sit with your back straight, right? All these different things. Pranayama, control of the breath. I don't know if you've ever tried that. I used to do, a little bit with Hatha Yoga. But it does very much calm the mind, right? Anyone who practices, Of course, it's, if you practice for 10 minutes, you're not going to get very far in yoga, but it does, you can see it has its effect. Pranayama, pratyahara, withdrawing the senses from the sense objects, consciously not thinking about the sense objects. And then finally, you're ready to concentrate. This isn't meditation yet, it's called dharana. You're pulling the mind away from all the different things and remembrances you had and fixing it on your object of meditation, which Krishna describes, of course, as himself in the heart. So this is the meditation on the soul, super soul. And then it takes a lot of work, fixing I never could get this, fixing the gaze between the eyebrows. I mean, immediately you feel like you're going to get cross-eyes. I don't know how you could do it. Or at the tip of the nose, that's even harder. But there it is. And then you're ready to meditate, dhyana. This is number 5 of 7 of 8. And dhyana is real deep concentration, meditation, absorption. And samadhi means you're fully concentrated. There's no break. It's like the flow of oil from a pot. Right? It's like that. And Arjun said, no way. No way I can do that. You know, the mind is, what did he compare it to? Who remembers? A hurricane. Yeah, very powerful wind. How could you control it? Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadridham tasyaham nirguham manye vayu eva sudushkaram. You know, I always think of my days in Miami when the hurricanes would blow up. You know, impossible to control. So, so Prabhupada would always make the point: if even Arjun, who's so much more qualified than we are, thought that he couldn't do it, then who are we to think that we can go, you know, for half an hour to yoga class and think we're really going to make advancement, you know? So, the yogi is working with the mind. He's wrestling with that mind, right? Getting away from the hubbub of the city, going to a quiet place, you know, everything so that he can somehow grab hold of that mind. But it's artificial, and in this age, it's practically impossible. A few can do it. I remember recently I saw, I was going through Wikipedia or something, and I looked up the Kumbh Mela, and they had a whole shot of all the yogis who had come down from the Himalayas. You know, they're all naked. Of course, they showed them in such a way that, you know, it was a family magazine. But there they were, with a lot of them with ashes on. You know, they're all in a group. And if you read about it, there's different groups of them who come down, just to bathe at a certain time, auspicious time, in the confluence of the three rivers, and so that they'll get liberation. But there's no question of having a mass movement of thousands and millions of people doing that. It's very, very rare. But the universal principle, what I'm getting at, is that it's the mind that we're dealing with. And the practice that we have is practical for this age. It's practical for this age. That's why the famous verse, or it's often the first verse that devotees who want to memorize verses memorize. Harir Nama, Harir Nama, Harir Nama eva kevalam, kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatiranyata. There's only a few different words there. The point is that in this age of Kali, which is in the verse, kalo, nasteva, na asti eva, there's certainly no other. That's what that phrase nasteva means. He says 3 times. There's no other way, no other way, no other way in this age than chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name. For what? For achieving the gati, the goal of life, which is to completely withdraw the mind from matter, purify it to the point where 100% of the time we're thinking of Krishna, we're thinking of the relationship with Krishna, the thing is transcendental. No more wandering off to the habit of the material side. So that's what's being spoken of here. Now, here it's saying, one who can see, or one who sees the Supersoul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind unless he approaches the transcendental destination. So that means that there's to be training. These principles of knowledge that were given in verses 8 to 12, you know, the chief of which says, Prabhupada says, Mayan anyena Mayan. What is it? It's unbroken abjabicharani bhakti to me. Says without that one, the others don't mean anything. So that's the key. Amanitvam, adambitvam, and then maichananya yogena. Ananya. Ananya means one-pointed yoga to me. Bhaktir abhyabicharani. It comes down to bhakti. Because the mind can be controlled when it is absorbed in something that is intrinsically attractive. What is the mind looking for? We're looking for, in the material sphere, things that will be pleasing to us. And so that's the mind, sankalpa, vikalpa, attraction and repulsion. No, yes, this is pleasing, you know. You know, like scanning, you know. So by force, because we're not used to it, the mind has to be placed on Krishna. And when we do that, we find that Krishna is intrinsically attractive. His very name means all attractive. And so when we become a little absorbed, then the soul experiences a little bit of that natural attraction to Krishna. But it goes against our development of the false ego, that I'm the enjoyer. You see? And so there's a tendency, because of habituation, probably called it conditioning, to fall back into that realm of egoistic thinking. The mind is saying, what's in it for me? How can I enjoy like that? Therefore, we need training and association and all the things that we're doing. But it's possible. So by training, one can come to this point of seeing what's really there, which is the super soul and the soul present in every body. And when it can actually do that, doesn't degrade himself and can go to the final goal. And you have a question? Comment?
Yeah, it's kind of just a little Sanskrit question from that verse, Hare Nama. You mentioned to me earlier, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago or something, how that suffix, the au, like in Vande Rupa Sanatana, Raghu Yugo. Yeah. I was wondering, is
I
it
don't know if it's not always dual.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah.
Kalau, because Kalau is in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know Sanskrit well enough today, but in this case, it's not dual.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's just go through this little purport. By accepting the material existence, living entity has become situated differently than in his spiritual existence. So we're in an unnatural state. But if one understands that the Supreme is situated in his Paramatman everywhere, that is, if one can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of God in every living thing, he doesn't degrade himself by destructive mentality, gradually advances to the spiritual world. So, if you think about it, why would we want to forget? We want to forget so that we can engage in this illusion that we're independent enjoyers. So much of what we do is trying to combat that or chip away at it, reform that disease mentality. Just the bowing down. So much bowing down. You know, come into the temple, we bow down. Right? I was pointing out to Ishtadev Prabhu, there's this etiquette book that was produced by Chowpatty. I don't know if you've seen that. The very first thing is a bow down. And when you come into the temple, you're bowing down to all the devotees first. Vanchakalpatarubhascha. You notice when I come in the morning, knock on there and bow down. Then you bow down to Prabhupada. And if the deities are open, then you do down to each one. So, but there's so much bowing down. Why? Because that is a direct, physical negation of the false ego. It says, some of you may not have been here. Ishtadev, I don't think you heard this. There's a nice book that was written by Sanatana Goswami called Krishna Leela Stava. It's a meditation on Krishna's Leela. He writes simple verses, and with each pastime, there's one or more obeisances woven into it. So at the beginning of the book, my old friend Gopi Puranadana Prabhu, gone 10 years now, he wrote he added a little purport, a commentary near the beginning, describing the intrinsic and the inner meaning of the word namaha, which we chant all the time. Nama, Om, Vishnu. There's a lot of namas. What does it really mean? So first of all, there's different levels of offering obeisances. Have you? I don't know if any of you have ever traveled on Air India. You have? Did you ever? Yeah, Air India. So don't they namaste? When you come in, the flight attendants. So that's the lowest level. They're not really bowing down to you. It's say welcome, hello. But it's namaste, namaste Saraswati Devi. It's the same words we chant, but we chant it with more meaning. So then there's bowing down physically, but not dandavats. We do it all the time, this shape, which is good. It's getting there, but real ultimate bowing down is the dandavats. Dandavats means like a stick. Now, literally, it's supposed to fall down like a stick. I don't know how you do that without getting injured. You have to have a first aid kit nearby. Your nose gets poked. But anyway, we get there, in our own way. So that the 8 parts of the body are touching the ground. There's this whole science to it. So that's really bowing down, ultimately. So what does nama mean? Very intrinsic. It's very intuitively. Not mine. This body is not mine. It's yours, spiritual master, the deities, whoever you're bowing down to. That's the meaning of it. And you can see how there's a conversation Prabhupada had once with, I think it was in the early days in San Francisco, where he was talking about the importance of bowing down, and one fellow was saying, "I'm not going to bow down to anyone, And so Prabhupada said, "Yes, you will. You know, when you get sick and you get old and you die, you're bowing down. You have to surrender to the greater power of nature. You know, so it's artificial that we're thinking that we're really independent. We have all of this. We're really tightly bound by the modes of nature, by our age, by our body, by our limitations, all these things. So so getting over that false ego. The false ego is characterized by I and my, otherwise known as aham mameti. I'm this body, and things in relation to the body are mine. And I want to increase as many things that are mine, that I can control. It's just the opposite of real ego. We can't give up ego, the sense of self. Real ego is that I don't own anything. Rather, I am Krishna's. He owns everything. And my natural state is to be like the hand, simply acting according to his will for his pleasure. And the fact is that when you act in that way, there's a certain spiritual pleasure that comes. And the more we do that, and the more we're conscious of Krishna as we serve him, the more we'll experience this spiritual pleasure that we read about all the time. And the wonderful thing is, the less you claim as yours separate. Okay, I have my devotees and this and that, but you can see how outside people, they build big artificial accretions, piles of things that they think they control, beginning with the family and the extensions. This morning there was this incredible description in the Bhagavad Gita of what should we say, the seduction of Agnidra. He wasn't seducing her, she was seducing him. And so that's where it all begins. In a few chapters we're going to hear from Rishabdev. This is all leading to the Rishabdev's instructions, which are very key. And he has the verse, Pungsa striya mituni bhava metang tayo mato hridaya granta maho ata grihat cheta sutapta vittar janasya moho yamaham mameti. You hear that, mameti? That's it. So he says it all starts with sex attraction. Pungsa striya, man and woman. Mituni bhavam, they get into the sex mood. Mituni bhava means the old aura of sex attraction. And when they actually have sex, mituni bhava tayo mito hridaya granta maho. Hridaya grantam, the knots in the heart are tied tightly. And in any civilized world, at least there's marriage. Okay, so that's then you have to have a griha. You have to have a place. Chetra means a field where you farm and you do, or it can mean a job, anything for supporting the griha. And then come children, sutta, sons, etc. Apta, the extended family. You don't just marry one person; you marry a whole family, right? Everyone knows that. And then to support it all, vitta, wealth. You have to suddenly worry about all of that. In this way, janasya moho yamaham mameti. Janasya means to generate. Janasya moho, so much illusion, bewilderment, characterized by aham mameti, by yamaham mameti, that I and my full thing. Now, back to our verse at the end of the 7th chapter, because I just want to focus on that for a minute. This is how we came here. And reversing the process is how we go back. So, Ichcha Dvesha Samutena, I want to enjoy separately from Krishna. And Dvesha, I hate to serve him. This is the basic mentality. How every living entity here, all the trillions and zillions of them, started with this mentality. Samutena, Dvandva Moha, that gives rise to the delusion of duality. Dvandva Moha. In other words, this is good, this is bad, this is pleasurable, this is painful. All of the things that we judge and how we live on the conditioned plane. And from that dvandva moha, sarva bhutani sammoham, every living being in this world is bewildered. Sarva bhutani sammoham means totally bewildered. And sarga yanti paramta, we come into this world of duality and we stay here for who knows how long, billions of years. Excuse me, 1 second, I got something in my eye. So how do we get out of this delusion of duality, of always judging the good and bad on the material platform, and rise above that? That's the next verse. Tesham yesham tvantagatam papam. Tu, remember some of you have been in the class, the word tu means on the other hand. Yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvanda mohane maktaba jantem ham judabata. How can we develop our ability to worship Krishna with strong desire and vow? Drida vrata. Dhrida Vrata is how we succeed. Because we have our conditioned nature is pulling us in the opposite direction. We have to be determined in order to overcome that and progress nicely. So this is the formula. First of all, we have to end sin. Antaga means ending. Papam. Now, there's some readings of this that you're ending your sinful reactions too. Now, Krishna is taking charge of that. When you serve him sincerely, chanting his name, so many sinful reactions are being negated. You're being freed from that, even unknowingly. This is the power of the holy name, the power of the process of devotional service. So that's going on, but at the same time, we have to end the sin here. And that's where you need association, you need to have knowledge and all of these different things, and especially you need strong chanting. So, andakatam papam, jananam punya kamanam, and you're simply performing punya. Now, there are different kinds of punya. Punya can be for elevation to heavenly planets, but this is bhakti punya. This is activities, the virtuous activities that are within the realm of devotional service. So we're performing activities that are helping us, and we're not performing those activities that will hurt us. It's always accepting the auspicious and neglecting the inauspicious, rejecting. So punya kamanam te dvandva mohanimukta. In this way you can become liberated from the delusion of duality. And you can see this is all just the modes of nature working, you see. And I'm not going to let my mind get swept away by what I consider a favorable configuration of modes and all the different things. We have to learn to become equipoised in the ups and downs of this material world. And then, bhajante mam judabhata, such a person can worship me with firm vow. So that's how we can get out of it, the delusion of duality, by the process of devotional service. And part of it is seeing differently, seeing the Lord within the heart, understanding that He's with us at all times. He's giving us knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness. Remember we had a verse describing his function, upadrashta anumanta. Upadrashta means witnessing, and anumanta means sanctioning. So this is what but He's also giving us, because we're trying to be devotees, good instruction, giving us remembrance of what we should do. And if you recall, He comes outside as the book, the Shastra, and as the preceptor, or preceptors, we may say. The realized soul is coming down. So we have all these advantages. The super soul is coming to us externally and instructing, and He's giving us instruction here at the same time inside. So we have all these advantages, and we have to take advantage of it, and then we can progress nicely.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol. I was just finishing.
Hare Krishna.
Vijay Krishna. Hari Bol.
Well, Hari Bol Prabhu, Dhanabari is first.
Okay. Dhanabari, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Okay. Quick question. You mentioned that when we want to enjoy separately, that's the problem. Would you please give example, like what does that mean in real life, like practically what we think that we want to.
It's like trying to, I mean, of course we're devotees, but it's like a fish asks you, can you please describe water to me? It's like, this is where we live. Enjoying separately from Krishna means acting simply for the pleasure of our senses or our mind, or for the pleasure of our loved ones, or anyone but Krishna. In other words, it's what we've been doing so long that we forgot that it's a whole category of activity. It's what's commonly known as sense gratification, indriya priti. I want to eat something because it tastes good to me, and I forget that everything belongs to Krishna and all should be offered to Him. That's what enjoyment. That's what enjoyment separately means. You understand?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Vijay Krishna Prabhu can ask question now. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Okay, Vijay, go ahead.
Dhanabari Mataji, thank you very much. Dravida Prabhu, my humble obeisances. Prabhu, thank you for your class, and wonderful as usual. Prabhu, the question is related to two expressions we find in the purport. The first one is destructive mentality, and the other one is sense gratifying processes. So Prabhu, You know better than me that the human form of life is as rare can be rare. But still, due to the sense-gratifying processes, the mind can become so destructive that sometimes people go or for suicide, killing themselves, or for assassination, killing other people, like they do in wars and things of the sort. So my question is as follows. Why is it that sense gratification is as powerful as making the mind so mad that the options of destructing yourself through suicide or assassinating someone, killing someone, they become available? What kind of sense gratification is this that forces us to commit such abominable activities? I'm asking this question because I was not aware that sense gratification could make us become so destructive.
I think that we were surrounded by all this. In other words, again, it's in the next chapter we're going to read about the modes of nature, and in that chapter, chapter 17 and somewhat in 18, you read about different things in different modes. Food in the mode of ignorance, different kinds of meats and liquor and all those different things. Intoxication is a perfect way that you can degrade the mind and destroy the brain. And there's a fellow walking out. I mean, we have all these homeless people, and one time one homeless guy told me, there's a lot of mad people out here. The homeless guy himself told me that. And this guy is definitely wacko. I mean, he's talking to himself. He's having an argument. He gets into loud arguments with nobody. Doesn't seem to be dangerous so far, although I see people walking by, especially ladies, giving him a lot of distance. I see, is he coming at me? So it's an example of that. But even people who seem apparently sane can be practically insane. This whole war, you talk about war mentality, it's one thing for one person to kill another person. That's horrible. But we have people who start whole movements, nations who would go to war with others and annihilate. We have genocide. Don't forget that the mode of ignorance produces madness. And when there's madness, anything goes. You can decide that the whole race of people has caused all my problems, and let's annihilate them. So this is what we see in history. And unfortunately, we've been there in different lives, in the middle of it, in human births or subhuman births. And that's why, Krishna consciousness is so urgent, because when you take it up, just think, even in Chaitanya Leela, the Jagai Madhai example. Now they were born Brahmins, but they degraded themselves by their mind. They became such rapists and drunkards and all kinds of things. And they were Madhai was ready to kill Nityananda, and he injured him. It was horrible. Of course, we know how it ended. They became devotees. And they were blessed by Nityananda Prabhu and Lord Chaitanya. So, but we should know that the mind is a very powerful element, and especially this material desire. What does Krishna say? What is it that Arjuna? What is it that forces one to do things even he knows is wrong? And Krishna says, "Is kama esha, krodha esha, rajogunu samudbhava, mahashano mahapapma vidyanami avaidinam." This is serious. He says, this is your real enemy, is lust, born of the mode of passion, and then degrading into wrath. I was once said, what is wrath? Wrath is very powerful anger. It's not just being annoyed with somebody. It's like, going so angry that you want to kill them. So it all starts. And why is it so powerful? Because kama is prema that's been adulterated and distorted by the modes of nature. That powerful attractive force to Krishna has been perverted toward matter. And it always produces frustration. It's never satisfied. It burns like fire. And as Krishna says right in that second chapter, kama krodho bijayate, that from kama comes anger. And when you can't express the anger, you turn it inside, become depression, self-destruction. All of these are how destructive the mind can become when it becomes influenced by the lower modes of nature, and there's no good association, there's no Krishna consciousness around. You're just helpless. You're controlled by that mind. So that's yes, it's a very destructive force, and that same force, by discipline of the mind, we can learn to give up so many attractions. Remember, we talk about vairagya. Vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga shikshatameka purushak purana. The same ancient person, Krishna, has come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach devotion to himself, loving devotion, characterized by dispassion, detachment, and knowledge. How valuable is this detachment from all these entanglements? I mean, I sometimes over the years I've gone through and just reflected on what I was just saved from, aside from all of the wonderful experiences on the positive side, just what I've been saved from just being a Hare Krishna devotee. Going through the early 80s with the whole AIDS epidemic and the cocaine suddenly hitting everybody, and we're just chanting Hare Krishna. And all around us, the people are dying, and the drugs alone are like a scourge of society. Even now, they're still fighting this opioid epidemic. Some company found out we can get people addicted. Now they have to pay billions of dollars, but they still came out billions of dollars in the black. They're horrible. So. But if you're living a devotional life, you're regulated, you don't, generally speaking, I mean, anything can happen, but you don't think, I got to have some opioid, to relieve my pain. No, you don't get hooked on that. Hare Krishna itself, you can transcend the pain. Hare Krishna. That's the power of the destructive mentality. And what was it? Degrade. What was the other part of this? Sense
gratifying processes.
Yeah, the sense gratifying processes. They're very degrading, and that's why so much of, especially at the beginning, we're enjoined, if we want to be serious, to give up the four main principles of not eating, sleeping, bathing, but illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating, and to positively chant and dance and take shelter of the holy name. That's the only way it's possible to do it. And if you do that, you can feel yourself being freed from that bondage of those things, living a regulated life. It's such a wonderful thing to have the process of your enjoyment be free and always available. You can always chant Hare Krishna. And then, you can maybe memorize a verse. That's another unlimited. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. That was one of the first verses I memorized, Queen Kunti. Everyone can understand what it means, But it's a way of filling the mind with thoughts of Krishna. And there's a real pleasure there. And so many, then later on when the Chaitanya Charitamrita came out, I remember sitting down with one of the devotees. He was a main Sanskrit scholar working on the CC at that time. And he was showing me the first chapter of the Antya Lila, the last part of the CC. It hadn't been published yet. And he knew that, I like to get into the shlokas, and he showed me a whole series of shlokas that Rupa Goswami is in Jagannath Puri with Lord Chaitanya, and he's writing his play, the Dagda Madhava. And then Lord Chaitanya, what kind of play are you writing? And so he was too shy, and so the next morning he comes with all of his intimate associates, and they ask him to recite and show him. And so he gives one after another. And one of the ones about how Krishna is entering into the forest of Vrindavan, and he's appreciating all the ways in which that forest is delighting him. So here's there's two verses like that, and it's got this wonderful meter to it. And if you work at it, you can get it down. You can remember that way. Sugandha makanda pakadamakadandasya madhure vinisyande vandi katamadhapavrindam mahuridam Kutandolan mando natabinandalash chandanagare mamanandam avrinda vipanamatulang tundalayati. You can chant it. One day, huh? Yes, you notice the NDs. So, Sugandhao, very nice fragrance. Makanda pakadamakadandasya. The freshly grown mango blossoms are dripping their nectar, flower nectar, very sweet, attracting swarms of transcendental bees, which are becoming vandis. They're praising Krishna. They're singing, but not just zzz, zzz, zzz. They're singing verses about Krishna. And and the gentle breeze coming from the Malaya hills, bearing the fragrance of sandalwood pulp, is perfuming the whole atmosphere. And Krishna, in this way, this forest of Vrindavan is pleasing my senses in so many ways. So that's one verse. So when you know this remembrance of Krishna, glorification of Krishna is so pleasing, you read about it in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, how Lord Chaitanya would go on for all night, you know, with his intimate associates, just hearing and chanting, and you know, chanting and dancing, and then, so it's free. We have the instruments, we have the ear, we have the tongue, we have the mind. All we have to need is the will to do it. So that's completely.
Namasya Mataji has questions.
Who has a question?
Namasya Mataji, she's been coming for a couple weeks, and she's asking why there is a war in Kurukshetra, and why was the war in Kurukshetra?
Okay. I'm going to save that one for tomorrow, because it's kind of Prabhupada said only in the subject matter we're discussing. He's bringing in all the subject matters, and he said there'll never be an end to it. But I promise tomorrow. You save that question, and we'll answer it.
I can ask her to save, and because Prabhu asked the question about the sense gratification, killing, and all that war and everything that we were discussing, so she asked that question.
Tomorrow. I want to do one more verse.
Thank you.
One more verse.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Oh, you have a question?
There's also the section at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita that's setting the scene that Prabhupada writes about the whole backstory. So.
Oh yeah,
that's also
setting the scene. Check it out. Beginning of the book. Text 30. Prakrityaiva cha karmani kriyamanani sarvashaha yak pashyati tatatmanam akartaram sapashyati. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Purport. This body is made by material nature under the direction of the Supersoul, and whatever activities are going on in respect to one's body are not his doing. Whatever one is supposed to do, either for happiness or for distress, one is forced to do because of the bodily constitution. The self, however, is outside all these bodily activities. This body is given according to one's past desires. To fulfill desires, one is given the body with which he acts accordingly. Practically speaking, the body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into difficult circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. This transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from bodily activities. One who has such a vision is an actual seer. Some of you who are familiar with the Gita, you may remember in chapter 5, you had the same idea. that one who is transcendently situated, he sees when opening and shutting his eyes and smelling something and everything, he knows I'm not doing anything at all. That it all is being done by the modes of nature. So this is if you're detached from this body, you can see it's happening. Then also the material desires of the body are not really yours. You can see that, this is simply a passing phase that comes and goes if I don't act on it. But then what do we do with the body? The body is a gift, and we're not supposed to use it for sense gratification. Well, what do we use it for? That's where the name Rishikesh comes in. Who can say what it means? Yeah. Rishikesh means the Lord of the senses, the Lord of our senses. Rishika, Isha. Isha is Lord, Rishika is senses. So, if Krishna is the Lord of the senses, then he should be the beneficiary of the activity of the senses. Right? So that's what this training is all about. At first, we're not spontaneously attracted to do that because we're so conditioned to acting for our own sense gratification. But if we chant Hare Krishna and do these things for Krishna's pleasure, we soon find that there's a real subtle transcendental pleasure that's coming from serving Krishna. Seeing that the temple is clean and everything's going on nicely and so forth, Krishna's giving us some from within. We know we're doing the right thing, And at a certain point, it becomes more spontaneous. It's more spontaneous, that we're naturally attracted to do that, because that is the nature of the soul's senses. We have spiritual senses that are covered. There's this famous verse Prabhupada would always quote, because it's very pertinent to this. Atakshi Krishna namani nababe grayam indriyai sevan mukha hijivado swayam eva spuratyada. That with our present senses and mind, we cannot perceive Krishna's name and understand the import of Krishna's name, qualities, pastimes, everything. Shri Krishna Namadi. Nama means name, etc. Name, form, qualities, pastimes. We can't really understand it. But if we simply begin serving anyway, beginning with the tongue. Jivado. By chanting. If you chant enough, you're going to be hearing also. The Jivado. Swayameva Spuratyada. Krishna from within, he reveals to you more and more the true import of the name, form, qualities, and pastimes. And it becomes sweeter and sweeter. It's like these verses, Maduram Madarebyopi Mangalebi, of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Well, right now you say, wait a minute, I've had some glubjamins and barfi, that's a little sweeter. The japa sometimes is a little different. But at one point, the name will be so sweet, you'll never want to stop, like Haridas Thakur, So, that's it. We are in an unnatural state now. We are in an unnatural state where Krishna, who is naturally the most attractive and sweet and loving, we can't experience directly. So by force, by regulation, by our higher intelligence, if we engage, gradually the natural sweetness arises. Some of you may be familiar with Upadeshamrita, where the same idea is there. Syat Krishna nami chadisari satapya vidya pitto pataptara sarasya narochikanu kin vadanadana ninankala saiva jista svadvi kamal bhavati tadgana mula hantri. We used to chant the first 7 of those after every Bhagavatam class in New York when the book came out in 1979. So, Syat Krishna nama chaditari. Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes are naturally very palatable. But to the diseased tongue, covered by the bile of ignorance, we can't taste that sweetness. But isn't it wonderful, he says, that if one regularly chants every day more and more like that, and properly, that the natural sweetness will return. Just like if you have jaundice or you have hepatitis, if you take sugar, I once had a serious case. It didn't taste sweet to me, But if you keep taking sugar and gradually you get cured, and it tastes sweet again. So the natural sweetness of Krishna's name and form and by that time, all of this other stuff will be repulsive. All the sense gratification we thought was so nice before will be repulsive. All right, we better quit. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.
Dravida Prabhu.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the wonderful answer to my question. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. It wouldn't be complete without that wonderful response to my wonderful answer. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Your classes are wonderful.
You're wonderful.
Yes, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Haribol, Dhanabal.
Thank you very much.
So we're text 31 tomorrow. I'm putting in this.
Prabhu, you know which verse is that? The Jiva, though, is it from Bhagavatam?
Which verse? What?
The Jiva, before this last one, not last one, but before that, the Jiva, though, that I forgot.
Yeah, that's not from Bhagavatam.
No?
Atakshi Krishna Namadi. I think it's quoted in the Bhakti Samhita Sindhu, but I'll get the reference for you. Okay.
Okay.
Tomorrow,
Thank you. Hare
tomorrow
Krishna.
night you'll have it.
All right. Thank you.